Hello, everybody. This is Big Tuna coming at you with the wrap up video for what turned out to be a very exciting Korea campaign. I believe there were 12 videos, so this would technically, think of this as 12 plus. I know 13 can be an unlucky number, so think of this video as 12 plus. This is just kind of the conclusion to the campaign. As you guys saw, so we are on turn 379 of out of a 500 turn campaign. We were the victors. Korea came out victorious. We were able to lock down the science victory, which was great. Definitely something that we were going for. So I know that there's usually the screen. I think I screwed up a little bit, to be honest. There's usually, when you win, there's kind of the victory screen. And there might be a way to I thought I could just access that through the victory progress screen, but I thought I'd be able to I finished the game yesterday, but I was thinking I'd be able to come back and then start on the turn again or see that info again, just like the fact that I won. But it's not coming up in the logs, and I'm not able to see it. I was going to go through kind of the rankings, and I know there's there's the information where you can kind of see the map evolve over time and so on and so forth. But anyway, that info is, I could show that to you guys. I think it might just be more fun to kind of look at the late stage map and just kind of talk over the game. I think I'll on future campaigns, I'll make a better effort to make that info viewable. But anyway, yeah, so I'll just kind of show you the map. It's kind of what we've been looking at. So yeah, Korea wouldn't, at first, it wouldn't strike you to think that Korea is the most powerful civ on the planet or that we won the game. There's a lot of bigwig civs, honestly. Germany kind of came into their own. Berlin is pretty big. Was pretty big in the late game, so is Munich. They definitely started playing wide. And yeah, they settled a lot of cities around the planet. Come for turn maybe 400 or 415, they probably have a lot of cities that would be turn 10 and above. And yeah, that's why they're the second ranked civ now. They're actually quite a bit higher than Korea in terms of points. Yeah, Caesar has the most. In case you forgot, I did nuke Caesar, and I nuked the Inca. But yeah, I think America started to crumble a bit. I think they kind of seemed like they played a tradition game, but they just didn't. Or they lost some of their land, liberty, and then into order, but they only had 4 cities. So anyway, so yeah, I'm gonna just briefly. So we did win a science victory. I'm just gonna give my initial thoughts of how I feel things went. For those of you looking at this science score, I could you guys will remember if you watch the whole thing that this was up near 1,200 a turn when we were working all of our science in all 4 of our cities. So yeah, that this is not a reflection of what we won the game with. We actually had to be producing much higher science than this to win as quickly as we did. But yeah, so I guess I'll go into why I think we did so well. And then I'll probably go into what I feel I would have done differently and how it could have improved our chances. So yeah, I think in terms of what went well with the game, Korea, a lot of people complain that Korea is kind of overpowered as a civ, just because they just produce so much science. And you can kind of think of the resources in civ as some of them are much simpler than others. Gold is a very, very direct kind of resource in civ. You can trade for gold. It's almost like a level 1 resource. It's very simple in how it accumulates. Whereas other resources are very complicated. Science is tough to achieve. It's tough to build up a lot of science because you have to have high population to do that. You have, it, and with high population comes managing things like happiness. You also have to manage growth. So you can tell that there's a lot of other resources that go into, laying the initial population for your cities and then getting libraries built. So it can be very difficult to kind of organically accrue science. And the thing about a civ like Korea is they just flat out like they just hand you a lot of science. Like they kind of, you get the boosts when you build scientific buildings in the capital, like scientific buildings and scientific wonders. You also, and then you get the +2, like on top of that, you get the +2 science from every specialist, which is just really, really nutty. And I think it does get to the point where it's like maybe slightly overpowered as a Civ. I don't know what the right answer is. The thing is, like, I did place a few great people and got science from them, which was great. But I think it's really it's the +2 science from specialists. That's, that definitely accumulates, and you can start getting those specialists early. So like if you have a little bit of a hump, if you have a little bit of science in, over your competitors, you can leverage that, and like as you build like more and more specialists, you really, really take off. And it's actually, I didn't realize this, but there are a lot of like gamers, or like a lot of the people who play Civ5 online multiplayer, they'll just straight up ban Korea from the game because it's like they feel like Korea's too overpowered, just gets too much science too early on. And yeah, they're like very defensive, so like they'll get to a point where they do kind of like what we did. Like they'll turtle up. You can turtle up as Korea. You can start building units. You might be a step or two ahead of your neighbors, or maybe like in our case, like 5 steps ahead. Like look at the demographics. We are 17 points ahead of the global average. We are 26 points ahead of the weakest Civ. I mean, 7 points is pretty commendable. 17 points is ridiculous. I mean, that's like, I mean, I think we made some good decisions as Korea, and we did build up, and we got our universities out, and we did play a strong scientific game. We obviously did rationalism, which was smart. But yeah, pairing Korea with rationalism feels a little bit overpowered. And to be fair, rationalism itself is probably a bit overpowered, which I can't go into every detail of the game, or we're going to be here for a long time. But especially I think Korea, I don't know how I would modify it to make it more balanced, but it's probably definitely for hunkering down, it's probably the strongest Civ in the game. It put a little bit of pressure on me at the beginning, and that's frankly, that's why I picked Korea. I didn't want to lose the first series I made. And it put a little bit of pressure because, like, if I couldn't win as Korea, well, then, like, who can I win as anybody? But yeah, I think the things that we did right are that we settled a few cities. We didn't try to go, like, way too wide with Korea. We obviously, like, recognized that a tradition game was good. We put focus on, like, continuously trying to evolve our science, get new science buildings, get the university unlocked, and then get into the public schools, and then eventually get the research labs. We had the science game in mind. Like, yeah, some Civs it really is open to interpretation of like what you think the best plan is. Korea, I think it was always the science victory, and I think we did a good job of just going for that. We did lock down just like a lot of wonders in the capital. Broadway, CN Tower, Cristo Redentor, Eiffel Tower, Globe Theater, Great Library, Hubble, the Space Telescope. I mean, that's 7 right there, I believe. Leaning Tower of Pisa, Pentagon, Prora, Red Fort, Sistine Chapel. So we really accumulated a lot of wonders. Yeah, to go for Hubble Space Telescope and lock that down, that tends to be a really key. If there's a few people going for the science victory, which I feel like there were not. Like, I've definitely had games going for a science victory where I've had like a pretty clear-cut competitor, and like we're really going tit for tat. We're like, it's really nerve-wracking. We're kind of building one unit after the other. We're like trading, like they'll build the booster, I'll build the stasis chamber, and we'll go back and forth like that. They're getting the Hubble Space Telescope in a case like that can really differentiate you, and it can really like start making things go into your favor for the scientific victory. We didn't need it, but we recognize that we should go lock down these science things that are really going to help us in the future. So I think, yeah, we played that right. I mean, obviously I think we invested a heavy amount in our defenses. Like, I think we invested an appropriate amount in our defenses. We didn't fall so far behind that like Germany kind of got wise and invaded us, or that like one of our neighbors across the continent could have done that, where we had like we didn't have an isolated start, but we had, I would say, a semi-isolated start. And we could have fallen into a trap where we like, and I've definitely done this on tradition games, where you get really, really excited just to get your cities built. Maybe your science is doing well, so you're like unlocking a lot of new buildings, and you just want to build. And it can be really hard to like, just say, hey, I recognize I want to build this building. We need the happiness, we need the science, we need the culture for the empire. But I have to put all that aside, and I have to build an archer. I have to build a crossbowman. I have to build a longswordsman. And, I think we we never got invaded, and that's pretty good. So we invaded we invested just enough in our military to not get invaded, but also that it didn't like bankrupt us, and it didn't ultimately prevent us from, reaching our goal, or like building up fast enough that we were able to achieve victory, or, early on. So yeah, I think those are all things we did well. Okay, so like, what were some areas of improvement? How would I have played this differently? So I will say, I want to give myself some credit, right? This was kind of my first series like this. I played on Emperor difficulty, which can be difficult. It depends. Like, some things can really like not shake out in your favor. I think we did get lucky in this start. Again, a semi-isolated start. I could see how some people may not want to play on continents in a game like this. Like, it can be kind of boring, because if you have a boring neighbor, you're really just turtling up. And it was, guys, I acknowledge it was a slow game. There were probably more exciting campaigns to watch out there, but I wanted to make sure that I like got off to a good start with my first campaign, and that it was fun, and that, but that it wasn't too stressful. And ultimately, like, if we played our cards right, we were able to walk away with a victory. All that being said, I think I was able to get away with some very early blunders. And because Korea is so like overpowered, we were able to just get away with it. And we were able to walk away with the victory anyway. So what are some of the early blunders I made? Well, first of all, now I guess anybody who builds the Great Library has to do this. But yeah, we did make the move. And I think you guys remember in the very first video, we did make the move to go for the Great Library. Now, we didn't, sometimes people will do it if they like, let's say they have pottery uncovered, and then they have a scout going around, and a scout gets a ruin and unlocks writing. That's a pretty good, like, Great Library rush. That's not what happened to us. We did get a free technology, but that technology was sailing. So we actually did have to hard produce pottery, and then hard produce writing. And then we built the Great Library. And then because of the tech boost and the free tech, we were then able to unlock, we got calendar unlocked in the meantime. Then we were able to hard research philosophy. And then we actually went for the National College. And then we started getting settlers out. So we didn't have our cities fully settled. I want to say, I think we fully got them settled by the end of the third video. Like, at least like had all our cities settled. But a lot of people like to get their settlers out in a standard game within easily like, maybe the first like 20 turns. And we got it out in like maybe turn 60 is when we got our first settler out. Something like that. And if you think about it, so like, let's say like you want to get it out around 20, like we pushed it back like 40 turns just to get our science under control. But if you think about it, like when you push your city back, you're not just like, if you push if you push 3 cities back, and potentially any others that follow that, just to build something cool, like, yeah, you get that cool thing. And we were actually even taking a risk. We may not have gotten the Great Library, at which point we wouldn't have waited to build the National College. But still, even with those things, we pushed back 3 whole cities, each by about 40 turns, I'd say, to go for the things that we really wanted to get. So we did eventually, like, we had a period where we just went boom, 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 got the settlers out. And we did have a nice boost of science that I think ultimately that boost of science didn't make us we weren't researching like hardcore technologies that were way outside of our time zone. I think what it helped us do was like backfill the tree and make sure we were in a really comfortable spot. Like we didn't have like random text that we hadn't researched that we were like finding out a lot later and then needed to go back and backfill, because that can be a really painful thing to do when you're in a time of need. So no, we were like always kind of solid, always on top of our science, which is like always had it kind of like evenly rounded, which I've had games that aren't like that, and I think it's good that we did it that way. But ultimately, like, you think of the price we paid for that, and the price we paid is that we pushed, again, all 3 of our expansion cities back by like 40 turns. An alarm went off. So like all 3 of those cities, then like if you think about the collective turn, that's like 120 turns that we pushed back in terms of productivity. So like even if we were able to be a little bit more flexible with things like the library, once we got those cities up, I think we may have paid like too high of a price to wait so friggin' long to get our cities out, because when you plant them, like, they don't, like, yeah, we didn't have to go straight for the library, which was cool. But at the same time, like, we also, like, we sacrificed all those turns of producing those things in those cities. So it really, really, really took a long time for those cities to get off the ground. And that was a little painful. And I do think, like, getting the initial science boost, Korea gets a huge boost from the Great Library, which is great. But I think we just waited a little too long to get the cities out. I think they were all, like, cities suck when you first found them, even in a tradition game. So they, like, it takes them forever to build their first 3 or 4 like buildings. And so what happened is we pushed the queue back so much by waiting so long to settle that, like, I, like, looking through the videos now, we're on video like 4 or 5 or 6. Like, we're many, many, many turns into the game. And where other civs probably had like big, powerful cities built up because they had just been founded for so long, we were still catching up, like, and trying to get through these build queues of like pretty basic buildings for a lot of these cities, just, to get back on track, to recover from getting a wonder and then a national college out. So I think ultimately I think it made for an exciting first video, but I probably should have passed on the Great Library and just focused on settling. And then after that, kind of like focused on getting our Circus Maximus out, and then like just focused, get a granary in each city, get a library in each city, get the national college, and then focus on our happiness, and then really just like grow. And that's actually my second point. I think something else I would have done is I would have grown a lot faster. Now I get happiness is always a limiting factor, and one of the things about starting the way we did is we did not, like, a lot of times if you start on like a big continent, like a Pangea, together with a bunch of neighbors, you have people to trade your luxury resources with right away. So you can get a bunch of trade deals off. Each one can net you for, like, let's say you get like 5 or 6 copies of your regional luxury resource, and then you trade them away. You can, that's like a lot of initial happiness you can get, and then you can afford to grow. So I think I don't want to be too hard on my decisions, because I think we were strapped for happiness, because we just didn't have that. We all we had was Germany, and Germany did have the wine, so we were able to eventually get a trade with that, and that was nice. But we didn't have like that. That was it, and we blew through the 4 happiness pretty fast, like with 4 cities, obviously. So it kind of ties into, I think, for happiness. Now, you can't really have growth without happiness. So I'll address the happiness and then go back and address the rest of the growth. I think for happiness, I do have a problem of doing this a lot of the time, but I blew off the city-states. I know Panama City got married to the Austrians or whatever. They have a unique ability to steal city-states. But I had Panama City with furs. I had Singapore with incense, which I don't think I had access to. And then I had Ragusa with dyes, which I think we did have access to up here. And then we had Colombo. But the point is, I could have interacted with the city-states a little more. Like 8 happiness, that goes a long way for growth. Especially when you have, in your capital, you get 1 for every 2 population. Like, you're only really paying half happiness in the capital. So if anything, I could have put that growth towards the capital. And I think I just didn't. A lot of times I won't interact or work with the city-states enough to like try to secure deals, to try to get happiness. And I think if I can learn to do that better, I'll find myself with like a lot of extra happiness, especially, yeah, if you're playing tradition. Let's say I just make 2 city-states happy, so they give me happiness eventually. Like, that's 8 happiness. That's 16 population in the capital. So that's like a lot of potential happiness I'm flushing down. So then let's pretend I did that and I was able to get my hands on some happiness. Yeah, like, I really think I should have leveraged my internal trade routes a little bit better. I do think I eventually like got enough workers to go around, but I think I should have focused on getting some more workers out early. And you can see, like, founding the cities early, it kind of cascades, right? Because if I get let's say I passed on the wonder, I get the cities out a little bit earlier. Like, pushing cities back by like 10 turns is one thing, but I pushed them back by too much. And if I didn't push them back by that much, then they can all get founded, they can all get a granary, they can all get a library, they can get the coliseums up, and then I can like kind of work in a worker here and there. Yeah, and then I can like get the land improved, and it all kind of starts to work. But it all kind of like, because I waited so long, I was working a really long time just to get a few core buildings out in all those cities, probably a lot later than I should have. And then that didn't leave enough time for me to focus on building things like workers, or like I fell behind in military units and so on and so forth. So I think that would have been a nice place to focus. And yeah, and again, like, I didn't leverage my internal trade routes at all. And if anything, like, if happiness is an issue, I think it should have been okay to just send growth to the capital. And the thing is, like, once you have a beastly, that's the whole point of having good growth, is like, let's say like my happiness is turning into an issue. Well, first of all, population translates to science once you have libraries. So I could chase one of those techs that has happiness. Like, I could go to get zoos in all of my cities and so on and so forth. And then I could also like convert that extra population to production if I don't want to grow. So I think I would have like leveraged all my internal trade routes, sent them to Seoul if I wasn't sure where to send them, or if I was worried about happiness. And then, yeah, I think I could have gotten much beastlier capitals, which would definitely help my science, but also, really help my production. Because when you have all those citizens, yeah, you could put them in production mode, and then you could finish something like way faster. So I could have rushed some happiness buildings. So I do think I had a lot of options there that I just didn't pay attention to and that I didn't go for. I think something else I didn't really pay attention to was my finances. I think there were opportunities where I could have gotten more gold that I passed up on. Of course, I did want to use I wanted to use my trade routes to do internal deals. So I don't know if I like horribly. I think I do have a problem of like at the beginning I'll micromanage really well, but as the game gets on and I get into kind of like the late game, the late game, I will just get really lazy and won't manage stuff well. But I think I shut down a lot of trade routes I could have used, or like there were a lot of times I had extra resources I could have traded away, and over time, like, it doesn't seem like much, but Civ is kind of filled with a lot of those decisions where if you set up a deal here for 1 gold per turn, a deal there for 2 gold per turn, it may not seem like much at the time, but that can actually like form the foundation of your economy. So I think there were a lot of little decisions I could have made to leverage more cash in the game, which just, yeah, it would have let us it would have allowed us to be a little bit more flexible and to, like buy things, maybe buy military units or just buy buildings. Like, money pretty much translates to flexibility because you can buy whatever you need that you're running behind in. So I probably would have tried to do that a little bit more. Yeah, and then just a lot of like typical kind of like small buildings that, and I think this goes to like settling earlier, but like looking through, like, it's a little crazy that, that's another thing, religion. I think it's usually always a good idea to go for a religion if you can, usually because it's such a small investment on the front end, and then eventually you give up on it. But we did net a religion, which was good, but I think it would have helped to be more religious. And then we could have, like, that's another good place to get happiness, is like we could have locked down a belief system that gave us like pagodas and mosques, that if we got, I'm not saying we would get both of those, but if we had a strong religion and got at least one of those, we could have netted like 2 happiness in each city, 2 faith, 2 culture. That's better with a wide empire. If I had like 10 cities, that'd be way more useful, but it definitely helps. So I think like I would have like religion one good example, but I also would have liked to like my culture game could have been a lot stronger a lot earlier on. I would have liked to invest in like an amphitheater and in each of my cities. I think that would have been really helpful. And I have found that like I neglected a lot of basic buildings. And then like we didn't get to the opera house again. Didn't get the shrine. So I think like focusing on small buildings or like taking time to say, hey, I want this new really cool thing, but can I take a second and like build something that my empire, like I've been meaning to build it for a long time. And if I build like the kind of the most basic version, then I can go up and build the next most like the newer version of it, whatever. So that would have been a good decision. And then I don't want to make this video way too long, but I think like a final thing I probably would have done is gone for, I don't know, like I do find myself questioning whether autocracy is actually the right move. I know that like happiness tends to be an issue, but if you look, like we did get a lot of buildings that help us with happiness. And I think ultimately I do think autocracy fulfilled its role in that it kept Korea afloat for happiness, which is great. But because you just have so many buildings, you also have the national wonder. The Prora gives you, I think, one happiness for every two policies. So that brought in a lot of happiness for the empire as well. And so, but then you look and we have negative 24 happiness, like a 24 happiness ding for civil resistance, for just public opinion for the fact that we chose autocracy, which is really nutty. We were the only civilization on the planet that chose autocracy, and I do think it tends to be. I have found that the civs, the AI for some reason really like going for order, which I don't think is helpful for a 4. That's like if I were to be really wide and have like 10 or plus cities, it's like you get like the +2 happiness per each monument, stuff like that. But I'm thinking maybe if I chose freedom, like if I chose freedom, I wouldn't be isolated from the rest of the world. And there are still happiness buildings in freedom. So I would maybe want to explore that next time. Cause I may be that like isolating myself from the rest of the world is actually a bad play I think it probably worsened my relationships with everybody. And then like, I also the thing is like, I think there are freedom tenants that I would like using. Like you can buy spaceship parts, stuff like that. If I could pair that with commerce, like that'd be a lot more useful because even though I am kept afloat by the happiness I get from autocracy, I don't like using any of the level 3 tenants, which is probably a sign that I probably shouldn't use the tree for like a quiet science game. Okay, and now I'm gonna so anyway, those are some strategies I could have employed. Again, ultimately I walked away as the victor. I don't think my score was too bad. I think like if you're gonna play tall, unless you're getting every single wonder in the game, you're gonna have civs like Caesar and the Inca who like conquer other civ cities, and they just get so many points for that. You're not gonna really keep up. Bismarck played they have a lot of cities now. I gotta give them credit. So I think those are mostly minor things. I think like the only really major thing I would have changed is to just settle my cities a lot earlier, because I pushed them back way too long, and then focused on growth. And then kind of like if I was struggling with happiness, just like put my city on like do not grow and then like secure the happiness and then go back. But like I think I said no to a lot of like production, and especially with Korea, I could have put all of the extra population towards like specialists instead of when I was running into happiness issues, just to get that much more science. So I do think I could have been a lot bigger a lot earlier if I would have done that. Anyway, but yeah, those are things I would have changed. I don't think I had a horrible game. I don't know if I'd give myself a letter score on the like how I played this round. I'll refrain from doing that for now. But yeah, I think I played a good game, and it was definitely, as always, every game of Civ is a good learning experience, to be honest. But just in terms of meta now, like as big, so that was like as the Civ player, what would I have done to make the campaign go better for Korea? But now is like what have I learned is like as Big Tuna, as like the broadcaster, like playing the game for an audience. And I've learned that like science games are really friggin' boring. I think it was fun for me because Civ is fun to play, but to watch, like, yeah, I don't think, I mean, I hope some of you guys got some useful tips out of this. I hope you like can adopt some better practices for sure. That would be great. But that being said, like, I don't think you want, like, it's not as fun to watch somebody sit and just build a bunch of buildings in four cities. Actually, wait, I'm sorry. I had one other thing I wanted to say. My other regret is I would have played a little bit wider. I do think I committed a typical faux pas that people do in tradition, which you can get away with a civilization like Civ, but they lock their number of cities to 4. And it's because in the tradition tree, like the tradition tree will give, like it makes you feel like there should only be 4 buildings in your, like 4 buildings total in your capital. I'm sorry, in your empire, because you get, provides a free cultural building in your first 4 cities. And you also get, 15% growth. It's actually 15% growth in all cities, but you get a free aqueduct in your first 4 cities. Anyway, so tradition makes you feel like you should only have 4 cities in your empire, maybe like one other to lock down a resource or something. The reality is you shouldn't go super wide with tradition, but you can get away with probably up to like 7 or even like 8 cities. I'd say the standard game, like if you had 6 cities as tradition, you shouldn't consider that too many. I think you want to lock down something like your national college first, but you can afford to spread out. And I think Korea, it would have been an interesting game, and I think we actually would have gotten moving even faster if I would have done that. And I think this was good land to settle. Then we might have pissed off Germany, but then it just would have made for a more interesting game. Like, I do think it would have been cool to settle a city over here after we got our national college up. And maybe not go like too much deeper into Germany's lands, but the cool thing is about the way science spreads is like you definitely want to have big cities. I don't think the fastest way to get science is to have like to play super wide. You definitely do want to go tall, but going wide isn't necessarily bad, and going tall and going wide aren't necessarily like, I think people are a bit too dogmatic in that those two things have to be diametrically opposed. Like either you have a game where you build like 10 to 12 cities, or you have a game where you build like 4. And there's definitely in between. Like, I think it would have made sense for us to get our first 4 cities, get the national college, but then if there's somewhere else we want to expand, and as long as it has like a national resource, a luxury resource, which we did, we had the wine, like I would have expanded here, and then you can actually lock down a lot of science without, then like the other cities can kind of chill out and wouldn't have to grow to be like super, like quite as big, because you're still getting a lot of science because you have that 5th city. So when you only have 4, you're putting a lot of responsibility on each individual city to grow super tall. So yeah, I would have settled. I would have played a little wider. Anyway, I'm sorry. This is turning into a longer video than I anticipated. So yeah, meta. I think I'm like, Korea is specifically a science civ and I think the science victory is the most appropriate for them. So that's what I decided to go with. Like, I think in the future for my viewers, I think I'm a little bit torn. Part of me wants to do a kind of like a random civ, like I'll just play whatever civ pops up. But part of me, like what worries me about that is that like when there is kind of a default track in Civ when you're not sure what decision to make. And I feel like that default track very much is like go and pick tradition if you don't know what to do. Because you can pretty much win on tradition with every single Civ. Whereas like Liberty, you can't really like, some civs just flat out can't do it, like India, or like I would also say Korea. And then like you can't, it leaves you a lot more kind of vulnerable if things don't work out. Whereas like tradition, tradition tends to work really well. So I feel like I would just default into a tradition track. And then like the next default is like the science victory. If I've already defaulted tradition, I'll do the same thing. I'll just like, I won't expand super far because I don't want to piss off my neighbors. And then I'll just play tall again and then do a science game. And like, that's boring to watch. And I feel like if I did a random Civ 10 times, like 8 of those might turn into a boring science victory. And I'm not sure I want to do that. So I might push myself and like do something a little more. Like I might play a Civ that I know is strong in domination and try to do a domination video, or at least like I might do something like a Civ that is known for culture, and I might like pressure myself to get like a cultural victory, just to keep things a little bit fresh and a little bit different for you guys. So I think I'll specifically for my next, I think I am gonna pick a Civ explicitly. I am gonna do a random Civ eventually because I think that'll be fun. I might like change the conditions up to make them a little more interesting, but I might pick a Civ. Like for the next series, it'll definitely be. I'm definitely going to take the science victory off the table. Like it'll be enabled in the gameplay, but it won't be. Like I will probably rule it out for my own Civ as something to pursue. I think the last thing I would say is, I think it's a little boring to have the Civs on continents like this because, like, I don't know, I did do Legendary Start, and I think it may have, like, with the bias that goes with Korea, they may have, like, defaulted me to start just with one other Civ on a continent. And things would have been juicier to watch if Germany invaded Korea. Then we could have, like, fought them off, and it would have been, like, a pain for Korea, but it would have been kind of fun to watch. But that didn't happen. We just really didn't interact with Germany at all. So, like, we almost had an isolated start. And that's pretty boring for people to watch, to be honest. Like, again, then we're just kind of building buildings. And then we're just unlocking the next tech and then building the next buildings and so on and so forth. So, I do maybe want to move towards, like, playing on Pangea moving forward. That way you, like, kind of have to interact with your neighbors. And, like, yeah, that probably means an early war or two, or like later wars or whatever. But like, isn't that kind of half of what Civ is? Like, I think it would have been a little sweeter. Don't get me wrong, I had fun making this series for sure. I'm just reflecting on what I learned from it. And I think it would have been a little bit more fun to watch Korea grow and develop, like after they had to fight off the Mongols or after they had to fight off the Germans. But let's say like we had a lot less land, or the French invaded us or something, you know? So yeah, all that is taken into consideration. Anyway, I am going to wrap up here. I think I went into probably too much detail, but, yeah, a lot of thoughts. This was kind of like my first time doing this, so I hope it was fun for everybody to watch. There definitely will be a next series, coming out, and I'll kind of follow the constraints I mentioned, like no science victory, not forever, but definitely for the next series, next few series, maybe just to like keep things fresh, keep it exciting. But anyway, you guys have been absolutely fantastic throughout this whole thing. If you enjoyed this, please drop a like. Please subscribe to the channel. There definitely will be a lot more content coming out. Like I said, I finally got this mic. I'm finally getting some of my software and hardware set up to make the viewing experience a little bit more enjoyable. So yeah, I am happy to be here for all of your Civ5 needs. This is Big Tuna, and I hope you have a fantastic time between now and when I see you next. Wow, I really didn't finish that on a great note. Yeah, you guys have been awesome. Take it easy until the next series. We have done great for the Koreans, and we will do great for other Civs in the future. Take it easy in the meantime. Bye-bye.